This time the City of Hamilton, the Public Health Unit. So the Public Health Unit, they're responsible for basically collecting data, analysing the data, interpreting the results, and then providing information to key decision makers on anything related to public health within the city. So they do things like, they look at things like West Nile virus, Legionella, and what they've had in the past is they had a manual process. They would, let's take West Nile virus, this is what this presentation is going to look at in more detail. They go out and they collect the information related to West Nile virus. They perform the analysis all manually. They have some data in Excel, some data in databases, and some data in GIS. And then they perform statistical analysis and they present the decision makers with an Excel spreadsheet saying this is our recommendation. So that took about a week to do, which was, when you're dealing with diseases and the spread of diseases and wanting to combat that, the faster you can move, the better. So FME got the reporting down from 1 week to 12 minutes. And not only was it down from 1 week to 12 minutes, but it was also much more accurate because there wasn't any human error involved. They built the workspace, they tested everything, they performed QA on the workspace, made sure it was perfect, and then next time they pump the data in, they know that it's all been tested. So, what do? Let's have a look at the West Nile virus in more detail. They go out, and the first thing is they collect all the data, so trap locations, habitat maps, mosquito count data, the water locations where the water bodies are, and also ward boundaries as well. So they do things like they look at and they count the number of mosquitoes, how much the mosquitoes breeding, what percentage of the mosquitoes are carrier of the West Nile virus, and they also take the location of the densities of the mosquitoes because obviously it's highly spatially variant. There's many more mosquitoes around stagnant water and things such as that. So then they have the data in GeoMedia Pro, and they have some in databases, they have some in spreadsheets. So FME pulls all this data in, and what it does is it uses various transformers to produce a KML file for the end user. So rather than the decision maker getting an Excel spreadsheet, this time they're going to get a KML file, which is much more usable, as we'll see in a minute, because the tool's interactive. So this is what it looks like on the right. So rather than a static Excel file, which isn't spatially enabled, they can now click on the different points throughout the city and get information on how bad the disease is at the moment, what's the count of mosquitoes, how many of them are carriers, and they can kind of look at the spatial variance so they can then decide, okay, where are we going to spend our money, where are we going to apply the resources to try and minimise this, or is the disease even a risk at all if it's a bad year for mosquitoes? So they're using a few key transformers here which are quite interesting actually. They're using a statistics calculator, so this just does all, it calculates mean, median, mode, standard deviation, things like that. They perform all the calculations relating to the data in here. What they then do is they build up a JSON file again. So they're building up a JSON file, and they pass that JSON file containing all the data to the Google Chart API. So the Google Chart API basically takes JSON data containing all the bodies inputs, a web service, and it gives you back a nice chart like that. So it's quite powerful actually. The charts look good, they're highly readable, and it's minimum effort for you. You just need a JSON file there. And then once they get the image back, they simply write that image to a KML bubble using FME. So it's automated a really, really repetitive task. Huge time savings, 1 week down to 12 minutes. The decision makers are much more happier. Not only are they getting the reports much faster, but they're also getting, it's in Google Earth, so it's a much nicer presentation of that data. They are now as well looking to do this for Legionella and other diseases as well. So they can apply the same logic and the same workflow and just change the data sources. And the key thing here as well actually is creative transformers do open up a whole new possibility, and I'll just mention this really because there's hundreds, well thousands of web services out there now, and you can really interact with any of them using FME. You've got the HTTP transformers, so the HTTP fetcher can make calls to any web service, you can authenticate as well, and you can get data back from those web services. So, if you any web service out there, as long as it has an API, you can use FME to interact with them, and that's hugely powerful. So just bear that in mind. If you ever come across a problem, you could do things like send text, make a phone call, all within workspaces. You just need to hit the right web service. So that's worth bearing in mind. Okay,